my name is Jeanette, and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today I'm going to wrap up the month of January. I read a total of 14 books in the month of January, approximately 4,100 pages. There were some smaller books and some longer books out of that 14. And so I'm going to talk about them. I have already done a mid-month wrap-up with the first 7 books that I read up to the 15th of the month, so I will link that mid-month below, and then I'm going to talk about the last 7 in this video. But before I get into the wrap-up, I was a co-host of Epistolary January, which was so much fun, and I want to thank Anne for inviting me to be a co-host with the group. All the other hosts will be linked below, and you can see what they read for Epistolary January. And so there were 9 prompts. Here is the bingo board and then the written prompts. And so I read a few books that will fit into these prompts. So I'm going to very quickly talk about what I read for each of the prompts. There are a couple prompts where I've used more than one book. I wanted to get all 9 prompts as different books because, I read 14. I should be able to do that. But not all the books had epistolary style in them or have letters or anything like that. So we're just going to start. Okay, for love letters, an epistolary romance. I have put in With Every Letter by Sarah Sundin because this is a romance that includes letters. There is third-person narrative that happens as well, so it's not a full epistolary story, but I'm counting it because it's romance and has some epistolary letters in it. And then the other one I'm counting is Yours Cheerfully by A.J. Pearce. This is book 2 of the Emmy Lake series. Book 1 is Dear Mrs. Bird. And the letters aren't really between the romance couple, but there is a romance that happens. There is a couple telegrams that get sent between the 2 love interests. So I'm counting it. Okay. For Lost Mail, which was a classic or a book by an author no longer living. And that would be Persuasion by Jane Austen. That's the only book I read by an author who is no longer with us. And I've already returned my copy to the library. Okay, for free shipping, free shipping is a book that was free. And so I put in Masquerade at Middlecrest Abbey by Abigail Wilson because I got this from the library. And again, I've already returned it to the library. Okay, for correspondence, any book containing letters between people, fictional or not. Yours Cheerfully by A.J. Pearce, With Every Letter by Sarah Sundin, or Our Yellow Tape Letters by Caitlin Miller. They all have letters between people. I was wondering if another book did, but I'm not going to count it in here. Okay, then Airmail, set in a foreign country. Again, so With Every Letter by Sarah Sundin, mainly set in Africa and Sicily. Our Yellow Tape Letters by Caitlin Miller, also set in Africa, basically the same parts of Africa that this one was set. So that was really interesting. Then I have Yours Cheerfully, A.J. Pearce, which is set in England. Or we can count Persuasion, which is also set in England. And that's the only foreign country ones I have that I'm counting foreign country. I'm not counting the United States as a foreign country, even though it's a foreign country to me. Okay. Package. A book that is longer than 400 pages. With Every Letter by Sarah Sundin. This book could almost fit all the prompts. The other book that was over 400 pages as well is Our Yellow Tape Letters by Caitlin Miller. Then, journal. A book containing journal entries. Okay, so let's shrink from a large book to a tiny book. Then Came You by Becky Wade. This is mainly journal entries. There are some there's letters between people in this one. This one could have counted the other one. And then there is also record of phone calls that happen, and yeah. And the other book that contains journal entries is Our Yellow Tape Letters by Caitlin Miller. And the last prompt was email, a contemporary epistolary featuring text and or email. Okay, well, this one is contemporary. The Edge of Belonging by Amanda Cox contains emails, or no, sorry, it contains text. We've got Canine Ranch Protection by Darlene L. Turner. This also contains text messages. So those are the 9 prompts. Now let's talk about the books I read a little bit more in depth. So With Every Letter by Sarah Sundin is talked about in the previous mid-month wrap-up, along with The Edge of Belonging by Amanda Cox. And Then Came You by Becky Wade is also in that. So those are the physical ones. Also in that mid-month wrap-up is Masquerade at Middlecrest Abbey by Abigail Wilson, A Cowboy Unmatched by Karen Witemeyer, Let Sleeping Vets Lie and Vets in Harness by James Herriot. Yes, those are the 7. Okay, now the 7 that I read in the second half of the month. Our Yellow Tape Letters by Caitlin Miller. So this is completely epistolary. It is told through journal entries and letters between people. There is a little bit of a romance at the end, but for me, that really kind of took away from the story because you don't see it happen. And I really wanted to see it happen, develop. I didn't want to just, all of a sudden, the romance is there. And it was like, wait, what did I miss? So we are following the sister of Ben, who was killed in World War II. And then we are following Jeremiah, who served in the army unit with Ben. So Ben is writing the sister Lucy to tell Jeremiah is writing the sister Lucy to tell kind of Ben's story and his time in the army. And so Lucy can get to know, because a lot of the stuff was kept confidential, right? And doesn't really know. So that's kind of, we're just following that back. And so there's the present day. I mean, it's 1945. And then we're going back in time to the beginning of the World War time, 39, 40, 41, when Jeremiah and Ben first met and kind of what led up to his death. It's very, very early on, we know that Ben was killed. And so we just follow, and all the emotions that go through that. Then Lucy is also writing her best friend, who doesn't live in the same community anymore. They did grow up together, then she moved away. And so they're both processing the grief of losing Ben, because it was like the 3 of them that were the best friends. And the way that one approaches and deals with their grief is different than the other one. And we watch them kind of follow up and develop and find how they're going to handle it. And I really enjoyed following that. And the way that Jeremiah tells the story really felt like you were right there with the guys in the army branch. I really liked it. The ending ruined the book for me, because we just, all of a sudden, something happens and it was like, wait, what? Like, I would have liked more of that, something that happened. That's all. I do have a quote to share from this one, and it is, "No one's grief looks the same. Even if they're mourning the same loss, it's different. Everyone processes emotions differently than others." Right? That's so true. Okay, then I read an advanced reader copy of Serial Burn by Lynette Eason. This is book number 3 of the Lake City Heroes series. I wrote down 2 in my reading journal, but it is book 3. So I had an advanced reader copy through NetGalley. Thank you. Lynette Eason is one of my favorite authors. And so in this one, we are following Jessalyn, who is a fire marshal. And she gets called to a church that was burning. And because it's a church, the FBI get called in. So Nathan gets assigned to the case because it's designated as a hate crime. Then more stuff begins happening. Jessalyn has to go to another fire, and it starts to look like Jessalyn is being targeted. Now, 20 years ago, Jessalyn lost her parents and her sister in a fire that kind of was deemed suspicious, but the arsonist has never been caught. And now, is the arsonist back and out to get Jessalyn? Like, what is going on? I was very invested in the story of what is going on, who is responsible, are the past events connected to the current events, and then the relationship between Jessalyn and Nathan. We know that they have a prior relationship, friend-wise. They are friends. They have the same circle of friends, so they hang out a lot. And you know that there's feelings there, especially on Nathan's side. But Jessalyn is very, I want to say, very stuck in her mission to figure out what happened to her family, which is not a negative thing. In some ways. It can be in other ways, right? And so she doesn't want to approach anything until she kind of figures out what's going on, especially now with what she's going through right now. And I really appreciated that Jessalyn kind of let her friends in to help her and didn't try to do it on her own. She was very open, which I really liked. The only issue I have with this book, or this series in particular, is there are so many characters, and I was trying to keep track who is who. Wait, is that? And I think my personal issue is I'm reading this series as it's being released, so there's a gap in between the books. But I'm also reading Irene Hannon's Undaunted Courage series that is currently also being released. So I'm reading, again, a gap. And there has been firefighters, fire marshals in Irene Hannon's. And then in this one as well. And I'm like, wait, get the right characters for the right book or the right setting. And so I had to think about it. If I was reading these books back to back, I would have had no issue. And really, I used to do that all the time. I would read the book when it came out, and then as I was getting ready for the next release, I would go back and read the books to refresh myself of the characters. And I really wish I'd done that with this series. And maybe, I don't know. She does have book 4 of this series is coming out in August, so there is before that. So could I read 1, 2, and 3 to kind of get those characters fresh before I read book 4? I don't know if I will do that. But I am reminding myself that that is what I need to do to really. I still gave this book 4 stars because I really enjoyed the characters. And kind of, I was invested in what was going on. Yeah. Then on Nathan's side as well, he also has family issues he's dealing with. Not to the same extent as Jessalyn, but there was a fire in his childhood that had tragic results, and so he's dealing with that with his family. So they could really kind of feel each other's emotions, even though their situations were different. So I really liked that. Okay, I do have a quote to share from this one as well. And it says, "The issue isn't you forgiving yourself, but accepting the forgiveness that God offers you. In doing that, you'll find that He gives you the ability to release the guilt and the shame that's got a stranglehold on you." Okay, now let's go to Persuasion by Jane Austen. So this was the book club with Tammy from the Protagonist Pub. So I read it with her and a group of other, I want to say mainly ladies. I could be mistaken. And I am not a big Jane Austen fan. I've only read one Jane Austen before, and that was Emma. And because I was familiar with the Emma movie, I was familiar with the story. Persuasion, I knew nothing about other than Anne gets together with Captain Wentworth in the end. I don't think that's a spoiler. Okay, so that's basically what I knew about Jane Austen. And it's written years and years ago, Old English style, okay? And I was trying to read it a chapter a day. Sometimes I missed and had to read a couple chapters to get caught back up. But I wasn't sitting down and reading it for hours upon hours, okay? Thankfully, very, very early on, like chapter 1, chapter 2, somebody in the group discussion pointed me to Course Hero, which does chapter summaries of each chapter to help you kind of recap what just happened in that chapter. And there was also like very beginning character introductions, who is who, how they relate to each other. That was so, so helpful. I was so lost in the first couple chapters. I'm like, I have no idea what I just read or what is going on. So after I read each chapter, I went and watched one of the videos for that chapter to kind of refresh. And then I chatted in the Discord with the book club about it, what I just read. So like that really helped. I really enjoyed that side of the story, or that's my experience with the book that way. Overall, I found the book very boring. Not a romance at all. Like, the romance comes out of nowhere. Like, that just, I did not like that. And I know that this is like an old, kind of the culture at the time and stuff, but why are they always trying to marry cousins or second cousins? Like, because it's just because you've got Anne's father, Mr. Elliot. Then you've got the love interest, Mr. Elliot. And it's kind of, who is who? So when I'm reading it, I'm like, wait, what? Now, there are some funny moments in this book that really made me laugh. And it was like, oh. And there were some really annoying people. And I felt for Anne, the way she was treated by her family and the way she just let it happen for a lot of the book. She does kind of begin to change and kind of start to make her own opinions and not let people kind of tell her what to do or make choices for her. She does start to stand up for herself. But I was just bored for most of the book. Okay, then we've got Yours Cheerfully by A.J. Pearce. This is book 2 of the Emmy Lake series. And book 1 is Dear Mrs. Bird. So we are following Emmy, who works for the Women's Friend magazine. And she made some bad choices in book 1. And she has learned from them. And now she is growing to become a reporter in this one. She is in a relationship. And we watch that kind of relationship move forward, but with the challenge of war. And then she gets assigned to try to recruit women or encourage women through the magazine to start working for the war effort. And she finds out more about what this means for women working in factories and how does that affect them. And because the women are home, they've got the children to look after, they have to work at the factories, and kind of starts on a mission of how to help them. And I was so connected and invested with Emmy. I did listen to this on an audiobook and read it kind of based on what I was doing at the time, whether I could sit down and read it or whether I could listen to it. So I switched between the both, and I think that helped me so much really connect with Emmy because I had her voice, or the narrator's voice, in my head because it is told in first person majority of the time. And then I just love the relationship and the way things progress. I gave this 5 stars because I just really enjoyed these characters and the way that Emmy has changed and grown and puts like really others and tries to help others, and the way that the factory story is told, I really enjoyed it. Then I listened to, no, I also switched. I tandem read this one as well. Sins of the Past. It is a novella collection by D. Henderson, Dani Pettrey, and Lynette Eason. And it is a romantic suspense. It's quite a number of years old. The D. Henderson is missing. The D. Henderson novella is called Missing, and we are following police chief John, who has just returned to Chicago because he has learned that his mother, his senior citizen mother, has gone missing from a retirement home. And so he gets called in to try to find his mom. And why did that take so long for me to figure out what he was trying to find? So he meets Sharon, who is the lead investigator. I really liked the way Sharon and John worked together, and Sharon kept John, allowed him to really be involved in the investigation. I really enjoyed that. And I was very invested in what happened. However, I did not like the way it ended because of I don't want to spoil anything about this. I just didn't like the way it ended with the missing person case. Kind of the reasoning for her going missing in the first place. Okay, then novella number 2 was Shadowed by Dani Pettrey. This is a prequel to her McKinley series, I want to say. Maybe it's called something different. Yeah, I'm losing the name. I cannot remember. I read this series years ago. It's mainly set in, it's completely set in Alaska with the McKinley family. Each book is a different sibling. And so this is a prequel. I'm pretty sure this one was written after the series. And so we meet the parents. So it is set in 1979. And the romance just felt way too quick for me. It basically takes place over a week, maybe 2 weeks. It just felt way too quick. Now there's a huge mystery going on. Somebody was killed, and who killed them? It's set in Alaska, but I also did not like the Russian bad guy storyline. Every time that's in there, it just really turns me off. Then the last one is Blackout by Lynette Eason. This one we are following Macy and Chad, who are 2 next door neighbors. Macy had something happen in the past. Chad is a police detective. He hears Macy scream and he comes to respond. Mystery happens, what's going on what is going on that Macy is so scared. They start digging that up, and we watch a romance develop. This one was my favorite of the collection, and then Missing by D. Henderson, and then Shadowed. It wasn't for me. Overall, I gave the book 4 stars for the collection. Okay, then I read Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This was a reread for me. I read it for the first time in 2013, which is kind of sad for a Canadian that I was a 30-plus-year-old woman when I read it for the very first time. But I knew the story. I'm sure I've seen the movie years ago. I don't remember it, but I know the story, and I knew the story or some of the story before I went into the book the first time. Now, this is 11 years later, reading it for my second time. I did not remember certain things, and I'm kind of upset that I didn't remember certain things, but I'm also kind of glad I didn't remember certain things. There are some really funny moments in there, but there's also one really sad moment that I wish I had prepared myself, had remembered so I could prepare myself for it, because I'm laying in bed reading this and crying, and I'm just this is the second book this month that did this to me. But yeah, it's just such a sweet story, and it covers 5 years' time. We meet Anne when she's 11, it ends when she's 16, 15, 16, something like that. So it's a good chunk of her life in just 350 pages, give or take. It's just such a sweet story, and I love these characters, and each character just is different. And knowing what happens, like the relationship between Anne and Gilbert, because I know, it's a classic story, right? I think everybody kind of knows that they get together. I don't think that's a spoiler. And so knowing what's going to happen as they become adults, seeing their interaction in this book and the way that Anne holds the grudge for so long, just every time she refused to say his name, it just made me laugh. I really enjoyed it. There are so many good quotes from this book that I just really enjoyed my time with it. Okay, then the last book that I finished this month was Canine Ranch Protection by Darlene L. Turner. This is a love-inspired suspense book, and it is set in British Columbia. So it is set in Canada in the winter, so there is snow. And we meet Izzy. Oh, I didn't know if I remember her name. She is a police constable. Her father, who was the police chief, has recently passed away. It was ruled as a heart attack. She does not believe it's a heart attack. And she is trying to figure out what really happened. And things kind of evolve from there. And some people believe her. Some people do not believe her. She ends up reconnecting with her partner. I'm like, again, name words, wow. She ends up reconnecting with her partner from 10 years ago, who is no longer on the police force. He now runs a canine ranch, training canines. And so there's a background between those two characters, and we know that there are feelings there, but nothing ever developed in the past. And now it's 10 years later, things have changed. Are the feelings still there? I was not a big fan of the romance, but the suspense, like what was going on? Who was responsible? Can they figure this all out? I was shocked by the reveal of who it really was in the end and who all was involved. Even when I suspected a few number of people, that's not English either. Even though I suspected a number of people, I was still shocked on who it was, really. I would recommend this book because it was fast-paced and kept me involved, kept me invested. So those are the remaining 7 books that I read in January. As I said, I will have the mid-month wrap-up linked in the description below if you want to go back and see my thoughts on the first 7 books I read in January. And I am still at, my favorite of the month is The Edge of Belonging by Amanda Cox. Even though I really loved this one as well, but this one just had the emotional feels for me in the characters I connected with. Yeah. So I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video today, and I would love it if you would put a letter in the comments below or an envelope or something just for Epistolary January. It's over, but it's not over, because we're going to come across books with more letters in them as I keep reading. At least I hope I will, because I love those. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.